the communities in which they came from. And many of them went on to become quite wealthy men in their time and accomplished a great deal in their lifetimes. There are still reunions annually everywhere. We have one in Blairsville, very close to us, a CCC reunion. But the people are, as in my case, are getting a little older now.
By the way, how old are you right now?
I am going on 73. I'm 72 and a half, actually.
Right.
And sometimes I feel all the aches and pains of that age group person, but on the most part, I suppose I'm as in good a shape as any other 72-and-a-half-year-old man. I've lived a good life. From the CCCs, I went to Jacksonville, Florida, and stayed a few months, and then in the fall of 1940, I joined the Army. I enlisted in the Army, in the 2nd Armored Division, which had just been activated at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I went to radio school, and for a short time after I came back, I was George Patton's personal radio operator.
So you knew him personally?
Oh, yes. And I knew his son, who was quite young at that time, but General Patton always took the son on the field problems, the 3-day field problems that we would have. And of course, he subsequently went to West Point and is now a retired general himself.
Yes.
And George Patton lived up to his reputation of his language, his barrel-handled pistols.
Do you have any story that you were involved in with him that you'd like to relate about George Patton?
I have one.
Okay, let him have it.
Not involving me particularly, but the message bearers and the couriers at the time used Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And you could attach a sidecar to them so that a passenger could sit. And we were out on a 3-day problem one time, and he got an urgent message to go back, report back to division headquarters. He jumped in a motorcycle sidecar and told the courier, the message dispatch man, to get him back to division headquarters as fast as possible. And we were out in the woods, you know. And the guy was driving the motorcycle as fast as he could, and he came to about a 6 or 8 foot ditch that had about a 1 foot board across it. Well, the man just lifted the sidecar off the ground and shot across that ditch on that board, and it scared the living bejabbers out of the general.
And what did he say?
Well, when he got to division headquarters, he fired the driver. But we again, were quite young, very energetic, 18, 19, 20-year-old youngsters.
Yeah, you were, at this time, you were how old?
20.
You were 20 exactly, because you were born in 1919.
Mm-hmm.
And December 31st.
That's right.
Okay.
And you can almost say 1920,
Yeah.
but it misses it by that part of the day that I was born in.
Exactly.
We went from there, from the 2nd Armored, and interested at this time there was no such thing as basic training. You simply fell in and got the cadence and started marching. You were not drilled or trained. Any manual of arms on the rifle, you had to just pick up by yourself or ask one of your buddies that had already learned how to do it. There was no organized training at that time. As we saw when the draftees started coming into the war effort, and I helped train and teach these people to drill the manual of arms and take them out to the firing range and just learn the basics of being a soldier.
Now you joined the Army in 1940.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to join the Army. You elected to join.
I enlisted.
And you did that primarily as a vocation or as something you wanted to do?
You know, I've thought about that a whole lot. And I don't recall ever that those specific thoughts entered my mind. It was, work was still not to be had.
Right.
And I had a high school diploma, which put me several levels above the average regular Army enlistee. And so the Army took me on a waiver for my weight because I weighed 110 pounds. And I've gained a little, but not a great deal.
You are 5'8"?
5'8".
Okay.
And they had to waiver about 5 pounds on me.
Is that right?
Yes. We cadred out to Fort Polk, Louisiana, to organize and establish the 3rd Armored Division. Now you must remember at this time, it was prior to Pearl Harbor, but the war effort was on, the buildup was on. And so the minute that you could direct someone else in the art of soldiering, then you were put into a cadre and sent somewhere else to establish a new division. And this happened, and after the 3rd Armored, I was cadred into the 7th Armored Division. All my time was in armored divisions. And from there to the 11th Armored, this would have been in 1942. Now this thing happened rapidly. There was you had to hit the ground running. And my specialty was radio. I had gone to Chicago to an electrical school where I learned the Morse code. I ate the stuff up. It was just, it came to me like talking. And I got very good at it. And then I went to OCS in the fall of 42 and was commissioned a 2nd lieutenant in the spring of 43, 6 months course. And went from there to Lexington Signal Depot, and from there overseas as a casual, unassigned to a unit. No unit as such, just a troop load of...
What year was that?
That was, Lord of mercy, that was December, Christmas Day, 1943.
Okay, all right.
And being an armored person, I was assigned to the Armored Division in Italy, which was the 1st Armored.
Yes.
And I had changed my branch of service from Signal Corps, which was overloaded with officers at the time, to Corps of Engineers.
Now, did you make that change? They asked you to make that change.
Yes.
They ordered you to make that change.
Yes.
But where was your experience?
None.
You had none?
None.
And so the experience that you would gain from making that change would be OJT, on-the-job training.
That's right. The reason for the change was simply that the engineers, as well as the armor and the infantry in the North African campaign, were so decimated.
Yes.
They had to they pulled quartermaster, ordnance, signal, all the other branches of the Army into the Corps of Engineers. And we were on the same boat, so nobody felt particularly insecure about not knowing what the hell to do. You know?
Yeah.
But my unit, my engineer unit, was split between Anzio and Casino. And the company that I was assigned to went to Casino first.
And what time of the year was it now?
This was in January of 44.
In 1944.
Cold, it was cold. And I recall the first night that I reported in, they put me in the mess tent. Constant, continuous rain, mud, this deep. And I had a folding cot, but it was cold. And I started to get in bed my first night. And I had the bedroll laced up very tightly. And I got up on the pillow and I was trying to scoot down into the bedroll.
Yes.
And we'd gotten in after dark. We didn't see anything.